Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever daytime you're having at the moment. How are you guys? How's everyone doing today? How's your learning journey going? Welcome to Takeaway English class. Welcome to the channel where English is learned through logic. Because grammar becomes much easier when we understand the logic behind it. And if you are just joining, hi there. I hope our classes will help you improve your English and support you on your learning journey. Right now, we are learning relative clauses. One of the topics that students often may find confusing. But don't worry, step by step, we're going to break everything down. Make it simple, practice together, and understand the logic behind it all. And again, if you are a first-time listener, if you are just joining, during our previous live lessons, we learned the basics for beginners. That is, we learned all the relative words. What is a relative clause? When we can use it, how we can use it. We talked about all the structures and rules related to the relative clauses. We learned the difference between defining and non-defining relative clauses. We learned the zero relative pronoun. We learned the king of defining relative clauses. So again, if you are a first-time listener, you can go to my YouTube where you can find all the previous live lessons, starting from the beginning of the book. Basics for beginners, relative words. So you can understand the logic behind it all, okay? Yesterday, I explained non-defining relative clause because students, people who were attending my previous classes, they learned defining relative clauses. We practiced the zero relative pronouns, all the relative words, structures, etc. Now we are learning non-defining relative clause. Okay? So again, non-defining relative clause. non-defining relative clause, this one, right? So yesterday, let's just do a quick recap of yesterday's live lesson. Okay? Again, defining relative clause, what is it? It helps us identify a person, a thing, place, time, the reason, etc., right? Because without this information, the listener might not understand who you are talking about without this information, right? So this information, defining relative clauses, are essential and they work like a passport. Why do we need passports? To identify ourselves or to identify someone or something, right? So we always need this information because this information is essential. Now, what about non-defining relative clause? Non-defining relative clauses work differently. They don't provide essential information. They provide extra information, more details. They don't help us to identify someone or something. They just help us provide extra information, by the way, okay? That's the difference between defining relative clauses and non-defining relative clauses, okay? Now, okay, so yesterday I explained everything about non-defining relative clauses, okay? Today we are going to learn relative words that are used with non-defining relative clauses. So again, if you missed yesterday's live lesson, you can go to my YouTube channel and find the video, yesterday's live lesson, defining versus non-defining relative clauses, okay? That explains everything about non-defining relative clause and the difference between defining and non-defining, okay? Because as promised, today we are going to learn each of the relative words, relative pronouns and relative adverbs step by step that are used with non-defining relative clauses. Okay? So, we know that when it comes to the defining relative clause, we can use that instead of almost all the relative words. We can use that instead of who. We can use that instead of whom. We can use that instead of which, right? Instead of where, instead of when, instead of why. When it comes to the non-defining relative clauses, we cannot do that. We can only use these relative words. So if you add extra information to someone or something, you can only use who for people, which for things, etc. Now, when it comes to who, When we add extra information to the person or to people, we can use only who, okay, or whom. We cannot use that. For example, non-defining. Example, Lionel Messi. We all know who Lionel Messi is, right? Here, we don't need essential information to identify this person, right? Because everyone knows Lionel Messi. Okay? Someone's asking, who is he? Okay, so even if you don't know who Lionel Messi is for whatever reason, grammar doesn't care about it. It's a grammar rule. When we start a sentence with a famous person, we usually add only extra information because this person doesn't need essential information to be identified. Okay? So when we start a sentence with a famous person, we add extra information, that is, we add non-defining relative clause. Okay? With non-defining relative clauses, we always use commas. Okay? Lionel Messi, comma. And then we add extra information, more details about the person. Okay? Lionel Messi. Who is known for his dribbling skills, comma again, as you can see. So we started the sentence with Lionel Messi, comma. Who is known for his dribbling skills? It's just extra information, okay? It's not essential information. Even without this information, the listener still understands who are you talking about or which person you mean. Who do you mean, right? Lionel Messi, who is known for his dribbling skills, has broken many football records. Okay? Again, this information is extra. You just added more details. It's optional. Even if you don't add this information, the listener still understands who are you talking about. And again, if you don't know who Lionel Messi is for whatever reason, grammar doesn't care about it because this is a famous person. Unless you know 10 people called Lionel Messi. Okay? But still, when we started the sentence with a famous person, we usually don't need essential information to identify this person. Okay? Think of it like this. If I remove this sentence, does the sentence still make sense? Is the sentence complete? If yes, it's usually non-defining relative clause, okay? And if we add extra information, we should always add commas. After the person, comma, here, comma, and in the middle, you can add extra information, okay? Another example. Muhammad Ali famous person, comma, okay? Who was the fastest, the fastest boxers ever, comma, was, hi Abba, good morning, was a friend of Mike Tyson. Muhammad Ali, who was the fastest boxer ever, was a friend of Mike Tyson. When we start the sentence with a person such as Muhammad Ali, we don't need here essential information to identify who we are talking about. This person does not need essential information to be identified. Okay? This information is extra information. We just added more details. But it's optional. It's up to you, okay? Was a friend of Mike Tyson. Again, if I now remove this information, it still makes sense. Muhammad Ali was a friend of Mike Tyson, okay? So always think like that. If this person does not need essential information to be identified, we usually use non-defining relative clause. We just say, by the way, okay, Muhammad Ali, by the way, who was the fastest boxer ever, and then was a friend of Mike Tyson. Okay? Or, for example, let's talk about our friends or our family members. My husband. Since you have only one husband, this person does not need essential information to be identified. Which one, right? So when we start the sentence with my husband, and the listener already knows that you have only one husband, we don't need essential information to identify the person. And you can say, my husband who is a doctor is 40 years old. Okay, this is just extra information. We added just more details. Maybe we just wanted to show off a little, right? To make the listener know that our husband is a doctor or something like that. This information is extra, okay? Your husband doesn't need essential information to be identified. If you have 5 of them, if you have 5 husbands, then you need essential information to identify which one. In that case, we should remove commas and use defining relative clause. My husband, who is a doctor. Since you have 5 husbands, one is a pilot maybe, the second one is a teacher. So the one who is a doctor is 40 years old. In this case, if you have 5 of them, if you have 5 husbands, then you need essential information to identify which one is 40. Okay? So be careful with commas, because if you add commas, you tell the listener that you have 1 husband. If you remove comma, you mean that you have 5, 2 or 3 husbands, and you provide essential information to identify which husband is 40. Okay? Another example. Again, non-defining. My boyfriend who lives in Spain now, as you can see, comma, my boyfriend who lives in Spain speaks 5 languages. Again, who lives in Spain is extra information. I added more details, okay? It's optional. If you have only 1 boyfriend, you don't need essential information to identify which one, okay? Since you have only 1 and the listener knows that you have only 1 boyfriend, you just add extra information that it speaks, okay? So, if the listener what's wrong with speaks? Guys, what do you mean by that? Speaks. Okay. So, my boyfriend who lives in Spain speaks 5 languages. Yeah, I don't know what you mean by it's A. Yeah, but it's A, not S. Okay. So again, my boyfriend who lives in Spain speaks 5 languages. Again, your boyfriend, if the listener already knows that you have only one boyfriend, you don't need essential information to identify which boyfriend, right? Because again, be careful with commas, because if I remove this comma here and here, it means you tell the listener that my boyfriend who lives in Spain speaks 5 languages. You use this information to identify which boyfriend speaks 5 languages, okay? That means you have maybe 5 boyfriends or 6. And the one who lives in Spain speaks 5 languages. The other one who lives in the US doesn't speak 5 languages. The only one who lives in Spain, the one who lives in Spain speaks 5 languages, okay? But when we put commas, it means we don't need to identify boyfriends. We just tell the listener that our boyfriend speaks 5 languages. This information is just extra information, by the way, okay? It's optional. So again, when you provide extra information, when you add more details and the person is already identified, then you need commas. Now, when it comes to the relative words, we talked about the relative word king, the king of defining relative clauses, that, right? So with non-defining relative clauses, it's easier because there isn't that. We cannot use the 0 relative pronouns, okay? When we talk about people, we use who, that's it. No 0 relative pronoun, no that. We cannot replace who with that. We cannot use 0 relative, okay? When we provide extra information, note that extra information or more details about the person, we need who or whom. Know that. Know the 0 relative pronoun, okay? Who. Examples. Mr. Smith, who fixed my phone, is a genuine person. Okay? Who fixed my phone? The only right answer when talking about the people is who or whom, depending on whether we want to add more details about the object or subject, right? We all know that we use whom when we want to replace object of the sentence. yeah, who for people, no. That for this things, no. In non-defining relative clauses, when we provide extra information, that doesn't exist. We cannot use that. Never with people, never with animals, never with things, never. Only in defining relative clauses, when we provide essential information to identify someone or something. When we provide extra information, we cannot use that. That's incorrect. Okay? If you are first-time listener, if you didn't join our previous live lessons, you can find all the previous live lessons on YouTube where we talk about defining relative clauses, where you can use that, where that works like the king, because we can use that for almost everything, for places, for people, for things, for animals, for time, for reasons. We can use that. When it comes to the non-defining, that doesn't exist. Okay? So here you can see that my sister who studies every day passed the exam. My sister that studies every day incorrect passed the exam. This information is extra information. So when you see commas, it already tells you know that. When you see commas, it tells you this information is extra. By the way, okay? So commas tell you know that. For people, you have who. Now, what about whom? The same goes with whom. When we have extra information, know that. John, to whom I lent money, is my best friend. This information is extra. Commas tell you, leave alone that. Okay? You see commas, know that. So non-defining relative clause is easier because it doesn't have too much rules that we had with defining relative clauses, because there we can use that instead of where, but we should change the structure, right? Sometimes we can use the zero relative, but we should look at the very next word after relative word, right? If there is a verb, we should add ing. If there is a pronoun, then we can remove the relative word. So there are lots of rules that we should follow, right? With non-defining relative clauses, if you talk about people, use who or whom. That's it. Okay? And of course, people who were attending my previous classes, they already know that whom is rarely used in speaking. In modern English, people use who instead of whom. So in defining relative clauses, we had lots of options. So instead of whom, we can use who, we can use that, we can use the zero relative to sound more natural and fluent, right? In non-defining relative clauses, we have only one option. Instead of whom, we use who. And of course, you remember the structure, because when we use whom, instead of putting the preposition in front of whom, that sounds very formal, we usually use or whom, and we put the preposition here, or we use who and preposition goes here. So when we put the preposition in front of whom, it's very formal, okay? So the sentence sounds more natural if we say, John, whom I lent money to, is my best friend, or John, who I lent money to, is my best friend, okay? And again, if you struggle where to put prepositions in relative clauses, how to use phrasal verbs, etc., you can find all the live lessons on my YouTube, okay? How to use phrasal verbs in relative clauses, how to use prepositions in relative clauses, what is the zero relative pronoun, how we can replace almost all the relative words with that, etc. All of the live lessons are on my YouTube. And when it comes to the Telegram, guys, there I share useful phrasal verbs, idioms, exercises from the book, so you can practice regularly. You can always ask me questions, provide your examples, etc. All you need to do is you can go to my TikTok profile where you can find my Telegram, my YouTube. If you cannot find them, you can just send me a direct message on TikTok, okay? And I'll send you my channels personally, okay? So, good morning, unicorn. And now we have which here, okay? Relative word, relative pronoun which. Again, the same goes with which. We cannot replace which with that. When we talk about animals, when we talk about things, if we use non-defining relative clauses, note that non-defining, if we provide extra information, like here, we don't use that, only which. So commas tell you, know that. My new phone, which I bought yesterday, is broken. Even if you remove this information, the sentence still makes sense. So it's just extra information. By the way, I bought it yesterday. It's broken. Okay? So commas tell you I'm extra info. So you cannot use that. Or my neighbor's dog, which barked all night, kept me awake. We cannot say my neighbor's dog that barked all night, because the dog is already identified. This information is extra. Kept me awake. Now, when it comes to whose, people who are on my Telegram channel, yesterday Yesterday I uploaded a page from the book that explains everything about the relative word whose. I shared some exercises from the book, so I hope you understood how relative word whose functions. The same goes here, okay? If you had a look on the relative pronoun whose, there, that page explains all the structures, rules, etc., how the relative word whose is used. Okay? The same goes here. Even in defining relative clause, we cannot replace whose with that. Okay? The same goes with non-defining relative clause. We cannot use that instead of whose. We cannot use the zero relative instead of whose. If we talk about possession, when something belongs to someone, we use whose. Okay? And it can be used for people, for animals, for things. For example, Muhammad, whose ideas are interesting, is a great student. So we know Muhammad by name. The fact that his ideas are interesting is extra information, okay? The White House, whose roof is famous, is in Washington. Extra information. My dog, whose leg is injured, is resting. Extra information. You know I'm talking about my specific dog. The clause, whose leg is injured, is extra information, okay? We don't need this information to identify the dog. Maybe for your friend or for you, it's important information, but not for the grammar, okay? So grammar tells you if someone or something is identified, this information is just extra information, okay? And you need commas. So if you understood how relative word whose works in defining relative clauses, the same goes with non-defining clauses, okay? And we remember that we have also relative adverbs, such as where, that can describe place, right? And in defining relative clauses, we can use that instead of where. Yeah, we should change the structure, but still we can use that instead of where, right? With non-defining relative clauses, know that. For example, Central Park, where we used to play, is in New York. We know exactly which park it is because of the name, right? The clause where we used to play is just extra information, okay? Even if you skip this part, the sentence still makes sense. Central Park is in New York. Or my old school, where I studied for 5 years, has been closed. My old school has been closed. Where I studied for 5 years, it's just extra information. And again, of course, we already know that we use where. When we use where, we can replace in, on, at, etc. prepositions that describe places, right? And the place. And again, when we use where with relative clauses, we don't need prepositions anymore. We don't say, my old school where I studied in or where I studied at for 5 years. No preposition, okay? When you use where, it replaces the preposition and the place, okay? My old school where I studied for 5 years has been closed. No preposition, okay? And the same goes with when. When can describe, we use when for time. The same goes with when. When we use when, we don't use preposition. Christmas, when the whole family stays together, is my favorite holiday. Where the whole family stays together, it's extra information. Christmas is my favorite holiday. The sentence is complete. The sentence makes sense, right? Even without this information. And of course, again, when we see commas, we cannot use that. Okay? We already know Christmas is a holiday. The fact that the family stays together is extra information. And again, when we use when for time, we don't need prepositions, okay? And as you can see, we don't have why. Why that describes the reason. We don't have the relative adverb why with non-defining relative clauses because the reason is always essential, okay? The reason is always essential information. It cannot be extra information. Therefore, we can only use relative adverb why with non-defining relative clauses. Okay? And yeah, well, in speaking, it's really hard to non-defining has a lot of prepositions. Unicorn, what do you mean by that? Non-defining has a lot of prepositions. Defining has just that and non-defining has a lot. No, this if you remember, when we were talking about defining relative clauses, right? When we use where. When we use where, we don't need prepositions. Okay? That is, if we can only use where, that means we don't add prepositions. Okay? Why? Because where replaces all the prepositions when it comes to the place, in, at, on, etc. Right? So when you provide extra information, you cannot add prepositions because when we, in defining relative clauses, when we can replace where with that or the zero relative, we remember that then we need prepositions. But since in non-defining relative clauses, we can use the zero, we cannot use zero relative. We cannot use that. That is, we don't have prepositions. Okay? Because when we use where, we cannot add preposition, right? Central Park, where we used to play, is in New York. Okay? Where we used to play in or in Central Park, no, because where equals in, on, at, okay? No preposition is needed. When you see where, no preposition, okay? The exception is, we know that when we use whom, if a verb needs a preposition, for example, lent money to someone. In this case, yeah, of course, we need lent money to someone with whom or who, right? Speak to, listen to. If we have verbs that need prepositions, yes, with whom and who, we need those prepositions. All we need to do is just, if there is a preposition, we should put at the end of the relative clause, right? There is an excellent video on my YouTube where I talk about prepositions and phrasal verbs, where we can place them in defining relative clauses. In non-defining relative clauses, it's easier. In non-defining relative clauses, it's easier because we cannot use that. We cannot use the zero relative. All we can do is use who for people, whom when it's an object, which for animals and things, whose for possession when something belongs to someone. Okay? Know that. No zero relative pronoun. Okay? And of course, when it comes to whose, on my Telegram, you can find the page from the book that explains everything about whose. I shared exercise as well, so you can practice the relative word whose. You can find that yesterday, by the way, I shared exercise on It was about prepositions, I guess. And then I provided answers. So if you are on my Telegram, you can practice everything regularly. Okay? And of course, you can ask me questions if you don't understand something, etc. Okay, now we are going to do some exercises. Let's see if you understood everything I've explained so far. Okay? Because tomorrow we are going to learn how a relative word can describe the whole sentence, the whole phrase, the full idea, the whole idea. Okay? So just give me a second and be back in 2 minutes, okay? Meanwhile, you can join our YouTube or Telegram community, okay? I'll be back in no time, guys, and we're going to do some exercises. Okay, I'm back. Okay, let's start from the basics. Non-defining relative clause, extra information. Extra information. Choose the correct word to complete the extra information. Remember to use commas. My mother is 55 years old, is a great cook. Which relative word can I use here? And remember, we have extra information. Who? Thank you, Haram. Yaba. Yeah, exactly. Amal. Yeah, who, right? We have only one option, who. That's it. Paris, who, which is in France, is very romantic. Which one? Thank you, Amal. Empty. So we have Paris here. We should add extra information to Paris. Paris, since Paris is not a person or people, we can use only which, right? Thank you. Yabe Abbas. It's which is in France, is very romantic. And again, you can see that here we have extra information. Paris doesn't need essential information to be identified, right? Again, with Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi plays who or which plays for Inter Miami is a legend. Thank you, Mel, Abbas, Yabe, Amti. Very well done. Who, right? Who. So, as you can see, with non-defining relative clauses, we have only one option. If we talk about people, who. If we talk about animals or things, which. That's it. Number 4, the iPhone 15, who, which, costs 1,500, is a new model. Which. Very well done, Amal, Amti, Abbas, Yaba. Very well done, which. It's a thing, right? And again, we have extra information, costs 1,500. My best friend, which lives in London, is very funny. Now, here, if I would add we had an example yesterday. My best friend, whose name is Alex, if I add this sentence, then it becomes essential information because we want to the listener understand which friend we are talking about. Okay? Since here we have commas, maybe the listener already knows about our best friend and we just add extra information. So as you can see, it's always optional. You decide, okay? So if you want to emphasize which friend you are talking about, then you just skip commas. If you add commas, it means the listener already knows about your best friend. You just add extra information. It's very funny, okay? And of course, hey, thank you, everyone. My best friend who lives in London is very funny. Exercise 39. Non-defining relative clause, extra info matching. Match the proper name to the correct extra information clause to make a complete sentence. And of course, remember to use commas. My best friend, we should match extra information and then main sentence. Thank you, Unicorn Harem, who is from Canada. I think it can match to another sentence. So, Unicorn's version is correct. So, my best friend, who is 18 years old, is very fast runner, right? This one. So, my best friend, yeah, exactly. It's still correct. My best friend, who is from Canada, is a very fast runner, but we need this sentence to the teacher. Okay. However, both of them are correct. Rome is famous for its history. Unicorn, your answer was correct. Who is 18 years old? As an option, Amal said also who's from Canada could be correct. Amal, thank you. Abbas, thank you, which is the capital of Italy. Is famous for its history, right? Number 3, the iPhone 15 takes amazing photos. Thank you, Abbas. Yaba, thank you. a male unicorn. Yeah, the iPhone 15, which is a new model, takes amazing photos. Lionel Messi has won many trophies. Thank you, Amal. Thank you, Amty. Thank you, Yaba. So, Lionel Messi, who plays for Inter Miami, has won many trophies. D. Pizza is delicious. Okay. Thank you, Unicorn Harem Pizza, which is my favorite food, is delicious. Number 6, Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps. Thank you, Haram, Yaba, Amal. 6A is perfectly correct. Has won many trophies. It was for Lionel Messi. So, Michael Phelps, who is a famous swimmer, is 40 years old. Okay. Number 7, Brazil. Brazil. Thank you, Amal. Thank you, Amte, which is a huge country, is in South America, right? Number 8, my teacher. Thank you, Yaba. Thank you, Abbas. Thank you, Amte. Amal, my teacher, which is my favorite food. Okay, so yeah, my teacher who is from Canada. Thank you, Les. Speaks 2 languages, right? I know that. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, quick quiz True or false when it comes to the grammar rules. Let's see if you remember not all the rules, but when it comes to the non-defining relative clauses. Number one, we use commas for extra information. What do you think? Is it true or is it false? True. Thank you, Amal, Haram, Abbas, Alice, MT. Yeah, but very well done. It's true, right? Luna said false. Yeah, but why is it false? We use commas for extra information in non-defining, right? When we provide extra information, not essential. So we use commas for extra information. It's true, right? Okay. Number two, we can use the word that for extra information. Thank you, MT. Abbas, thank you. Mel, thank you. Yaba, thank you. Glad you understood everything I've explained so far, guys. So it's false. We cannot use that when we provide extra information, right? Number three, if you remove the extra information, you still know who or what the subject is. If you remove the extra information, can the listener still understand who or what we are talking about? True, true, true. Excellent. It's true. Number four, proper names like Paris or Messi usually take non-defining clauses. True. Very well done. It's true. Unless it's false, or at best it's false. No, unless said it's true. It's true because Paris, Messi, they don't need essential information to be identified. With these names, we can only provide extra information to add more details, right? So it's true. Proper names like Paris, Messi usually take non-defining relative clauses, extra information, not essential. So it's true. Number five, we use the word who for extra information about objects and brands or things. We use the word who. Thank you, Mel, Abbas, Orval, Alice, MT. Very well done. It's false. We use who only for people, right? Number six, a non-defining clause is like a resume because it gives extra details. Resume or CV or driving license. Exactly. Very well done, Mel, Alice. Excellent. It's true. Excellent. Number seven, we use the word which to give extra information about places or things. Mhm. Well, in very formal English, right, we can still use which to describe places. Yeah, it's rarely used. Exactly, empty. Thank you. For places, we need where. It's very natural, and people usually use where. Okay? However, in very formal English, you can find it in only in books. Okay? It's still possible to use which for places. For example, saying the park in which I play. It's still correct. The park where I play. And yes, less for things we still use which. That's the only correct word to describe things or animals, right? So it's true. But still, guys, when describing places, when talking about places, it's very formal and rarely used. Okay, it's correct, but we don't use it. We usually use where. Okay. So if you will see such a sentence in your exam, maybe you know that it's still possible to use which with places. However, then we need preposition, but it's very formal with places, okay? With things, yes. In non-defining relative clauses, when talking about things or animals, you have only one option, which, okay? With the places, it's rarely used. Okay? Let's do one more exercise. It's very simple. Okay, let's do this exercise, and tomorrow we are going to go even further and talk about the relative word which, when it can describe the whole idea in a sentence, okay? And of course, on Telegram, I'll send you an exercise from the book, because now we are practicing non-defining relative clauses, but I don't want you to forget defining relative clauses, okay? So on Telegram, you will get exercises related to the defining relative clauses, okay? Combine the two sentences into one using a non-defining relative clause. Remember to use commas. My brother is a great cook. He lives in London. My brother how can I continue the sentence? Okay, thank you, empty. Who? Then, which word can I? Who? My brother. Well, it's up to you, okay? My brother, who's a great cook, lives in London, or my brother who lives in London is great cook. Okay? Thank you. Unless Yabe, unless empty. Luna, Abbas, Cleopatra. My brother who lives in London is a great cook. Excellent. So, it's up to you guys. If you put who lives in London, okay. Who's a great cook, okay. The Samsung Galaxy is a cool phone. It costs 1,000. Which? Okay. The Samsung Galaxy, which? Then, what can I? Which costs? Excellent. Is a cool phone. Right? Very well done. Number 3. Taylor Swift is a famous singer. She's from the US. Empty. Okay. In these defining and non-defining relative clauses, we cannot use what? Okay? We cannot use what. It's another story. It's another topic. In these structures, in these non-defining and defining relative clauses, we cannot use what. Okay? Only the relative words we have here. You can only use these relative words. Okay. So again, Taylor Swift, who is from Canada. Thank you, Les, Luna, Cleopatra, Amel, who is from Canada. Lionel Messi is a legend. He plays for Inter Miami. In Germany, I can say the phone what I bought. Well, no, it doesn't sound correct in English. In German, I can the phone what I bought. No. If you use what, then you don't need the phone. Okay, when you say the phone what I bought, it's incorrect. Then you should skip the phone. What I bought was expensive without the phone, okay? Because if we have a noun, then we add, depending on, we use defining or non-defining relative clauses, the phone that I bought or the phone which I bought, okay? So Lionel Messi, thank you. Luna, Amel, Cleopatra, who plays for Inter Miami? Who plays for Inter Miami? Now, as you can see, guys, we add only extra informations, right, to the nouns. Answer, Tokyo. is a very busy city. It's in Japan. Which, okay. Which, then how I continue the sentence? Which is in Japan. If here was Tokyo, where I live, is a very busy city. Yeah. But in this case, we add extra information to the Tokyo, which is in Japan. Number 6, my father is an engineer. He is 60 years old. My father thank you, Amal, exactly, which is in Japan. Who is my father, who is 60 years old, is an engineer. Excellent. Number 7, the Amazon River is very long. It is in South America. The Amazon River thank you, Luna, unless, is it Chinhan? Yeba, thank you. Thank you, Amal, for the full sentences. Appreciate it. The Amazon River, which is in South America, is very long. The US 30 engineer, that is okay. Again, this is an extra information, so we can use that here. We are talking non-defining relative clauses. Here, we can not use that, only which, okay? Shakira is a famous singer. She's from Colombia. Shakira. Thank you, Luna. Thank you, Amal. Who is from? Who is from Colombia is a famous singer. Who is? Thank you, Nana. Thank you, Chin Han. Is it who? Right? Number 9. Ferrari is an Italian company. It makes fast cars. We all know about Ferrari. Even if you don't know, again, grammar doesn't care about it. When we talk about someone or something that is famous, we add extra information. Thank you, Mel, which makes fast cars. Fast Cars is an Italian company. Thank you, Chinhan, Iyaba, Luna. We need which, right? Cristiano Ronaldo is a very famous. He's from Portugal. Is very famous. Thank you, Luna, Ales, Chinhan, Iyaba, who? We need who. Okay, how can I continue the sentence? Who is from Portugal? Thank you, Amal. Excellent. Who is from Portugal? Guys, the thing that I want you to write, well, not maybe the whole sentence, at least 3 words, because when we add this information, the structure changes a little. So knowing only which pronoun we use, it isn't enough. It's better for you to remember how to use it in a sentence. Okay, Mount Everest, who's from Portugal, is very famous. Thank you, Amal. Mount Everest is very cold. It is in Asia. Again, thank you, Amal, which is in... Yeah, exactly. Which is, right? Because, yeah, you can remember only relative words, but then you will struggle with how to continue the sentence, okay? Especially in longer sentences with B1 or B2 vocabulary. Disney is a big company. It makes movies. Excellent. Thank you. Nana, Amel, Alice, thank you, which makes movies, right? Jinhan, which, yeah, but which, Luna, which makes movies, thank you. Which makes movies. So, guys, now, if you couldn't join my live lesson, yesterday's live lesson, or maybe today's live lesson from the beginning, yesterday's live lesson is already on YouTube, where I talk about non-defining relative clauses. Because if you were attending my classes on the defining relative clauses, they have different structures. Non-defining relative clauses work differently. So it would be better if you can watch my yesterday's live lesson, and of course I'm going to upload today's live lesson as well on my YouTube. When it comes to the Telegram channel, there I upload exercises with answers from the book, so you can practice everything we've learned so far regularly every day. Yeah, but send me a direct message on TikTok. And I'll send you YouTube, Telegram personally. Okay? So again, guys, if you cannot find my YouTube or my Telegram, just send me a direct message on TikTok and I'll send you my channels. And of course, on my Telegram, I share useful phrasal verbs, idioms, some grammar tips, exercises from the book, so you can practice regularly. On Telegram, you can always ask me questions if you cannot understand something, okay? Provide your own example sentences, etc. It's been lovely being here with you guys. I appreciate you all. Thank you for the likes, shares, follows, comments, etc. Glad to hear that, unicorn. Thank you, Luna, being here with me. Oh, thank you very much, unicorn. I'd like to visit Milan, maybe one day. Okay, guys. So, again, see you tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. in the morning. Okay? Have a nice rest of the day. Take care. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.